There is a recording. Not a photograph this time, a sound. Captured accidentally in the winter of 1974, somewhere beneath the Arctic Circle. In a place where compasses become hesitant and radio signals arrive bent and exhausted, as though the atmosphere itself is reluctant to carry human voices any farther north. The recording lasts only 18 seconds. At first, there is nothing but wind. Not ordinary wind, polar wind. The kind that strips moisture from your lungs and turns exposed skin into something fragile and temporary. Then comes a noise underneath it. Low, rhythmic, not mechanical, not quite animal either. A sequence of tones rising and falling with strange deliberation. Almost musical, if music were invented by something that had never seen another living thing. The men who heard it were Soviet geologists stationed near the Taimyr Peninsula. Serious people, engineers, radio operators, meteorologists, men selected specifically because they were not prone to fantasy. They replayed the tape again and again inside a prefabricated shelter lit by a single yellow bulb, while outside the temperature fell below -40 and the darkness pressed itself against the windows like a physical weight. No one could explain the sound, and because no one could explain it, the sound escaped the Arctic and entered the imagination of the world. Newspapers called it the polar voice. Conspiracy magazines called it the cry beneath the ice. Radio hosts claimed it was evidence of a hidden civilization buried under the Arctic shelf. Others believed it was proof that something ancient moved beneath the frozen ocean itself, something older than humanity and entirely indifferent to it. Scientists mostly rolled their eyes, but they listened to the tape too. And that is where this story begins. Not with certainty, with listening. Because underneath every mystery humanity has ever chased, there is usually a moment like this. A small interruption in the ordinary pattern of things. A footprint in snow. A light over water. A signal in static. Something that does not fit cleanly inside the map we have already drawn. And humans, for reasons older than civilization itself, cannot leave those interruptions alone. Long before Soviet researchers carried tape recorders into the Arctic, the indigenous peoples of the far north already spoke about sounds beneath the ice. The Nenets, the Evenki, the Inuit communities scattered across impossible distances of frozen coastline. Their stories differed in detail, but not in structure. Something moved under the world. Not metaphorically, literally. The ice cracked in patterns that seemed deliberate. Sounds traveled upward through frozen water at night. Deep calls sometimes echoed beneath camps during the long dark season when the sun disappeared entirely and the distinction between dream and waking became unreliable. These stories were not treated as mysteries to solve. They were treated as conditions of existence, like storms, like winter itself. You respected them. You did not go searching for them. Western researchers arriving in the Arctic during the late 19th and early 20th centuries brought with them a different instinct entirely. They cataloged coastlines, measured glaciers, mapped currents, classified species. The North became a place of data extraction, scientific conquest, national ambition. And yet even in the middle of that machinery of measurement, strange stories accumulated. Submarines reported impossible sonar returns beneath deep ice shelves. Pilots described shadows moving across frozen plains where no animals should have existed. Entire expeditions occasionally vanished into weather systems so sudden and complete that later investigators could not reconstruct what had happened with any confidence. Most of these incidents had explanations eventually. Some did not. And the human mind has always been extraordinarily sensitive to the category of things that do not resolve cleanly, especially in landscapes large enough to dwarf us completely. Imagine the Arctic at midnight in January. Not cinematic Arctic, not the version from documentaries where orchestral music swells over elegant drone footage. The real Arctic. Flat horizons stretching forever beneath a sky so dark it feels geological. Ice ridges, rising like collapsed cathedrals, wind carving patterns across snowfields older than most countries. Distances so immense that the brain stops processing them correctly. There are places there where if you stand alone long enough, the silence begins to acquire texture. You hear your own blood moving. You hear ice expanding miles away like gunfire. You hear things that may only exist because the human nervous system evolved for forests and grasslands and campfires, and suddenly finds itself somewhere profoundly incompatible with human life. Researchers studying isolation have documented this carefully. Extreme environments alter perception. The brain, deprived of familiar reference points, begins amplifying ambiguity. Shapes become figures, sounds become voices, shadows acquire intention. Not because humans are irrational, because humans are adaptive. A creature that assumed every uncertain movement in darkness was harmless did not survive very long on prehistoric Earth. The Arctic exploits this ancient machinery perfectly, and so the stories persisted. In 1962, a Norwegian research vessel operating near Svalbard reported prolonged contact with an unidentified underwater object moving at impossible speed beneath pack ice. The sonar signatures did not match known submarines. The object accelerated suddenly and vanished into deeper water. Military analysts later suggested equipment malfunction. The crew disagreed. In 1981, Canadian researchers studying ice fracture acoustics recorded low-frequency vocalizations unlike anything previously documented in the region. Marine biologists eventually attributed the sounds to bowhead whales whose calls had distorted through unusual ice formations. But for months before the explanation arrived, newspapers speculated openly about unknown Arctic species. And people believed it. Not because the evidence was strong, because the setting was. The Arctic possesses a psychological property shared by only a handful of places on Earth. The deep ocean, certain deserts, the high Himalayas, vast rainforests. They still feel unfinished. Modern humans live inside systems of overwhelming informational saturation. Satellites photograph nearly every square kilometer of Earth. Algorithms predict behavior before it happens. GPS removes the possibility of genuine disorientation. Most of the planet has become administratively knowable, but not all of it. The polar regions resist complete comprehension in subtle ways. Ice shifts. Coastlines move. Storms erase evidence. Instruments fail in cold severe enough to change the behavior of batteries, metal, even sound itself. Researchers working in polar science often describe the same quiet sensation after years in the field. The awareness that nature here is not hostile exactly, but utterly uninterested in human presence. That distinction matters. Hostility at least acknowledges you. Indifference does not. And human beings have always filled indifferent spaces with stories. One theory proposed during the height of the polar voice fascination suggested the sounds might originate from geological resonance beneath shifting tectonic shelves. Another argued they were caused by trapped methane pockets erupting under pressure through submerged ice caverns. Both explanations were scientifically plausible. Neither satisfied the public imagination. Because explanations rarely compete successfully against mystery when mystery arrives wrapped in emotional atmosphere. This is important. People often assume belief in unexplained phenomena comes from ignorance, but historically, that is not really true. Some of the individuals most fascinated by mysteries are scientists themselves. Astronomers searching for anomalous radio signals, physicists investigating dark matter, marine biologists exploring ecosystems beneath Antarctic ice. Curiosity is not the opposite of skepticism. They are frequently the same impulse, wearing different clothing. The polar voice endured because it occupied a space larger than the recording itself. It suggested that beneath the oldest ice on Earth, something remained outside the frame of ordinary understanding. And humanity has always been magnetized by the possibility that the frame is incomplete. Now picture the Soviet station again. A metal structure half buried in snow. Diesel generators vibrating through the floor. Frost crystallizing inside the windows, faster than it can be wiped away. Men sitting, shoulder to shoulder, in heavy wool uniforms, while magnetic tape spins softly through a recorder. Outside, the Arctic night extends in every direction without mercy. Inside, someone presses play. The sound emerges. Low, hollow, almost vocal. No one speaks afterward for several seconds. Not because they think they are hearing a monster. Because uncertainty itself has weight. That is the part modern discussions of unexplained phenomena often miss. The emotional experience arrives before the explanation does. Sometimes years before. And during that interval, the imagination goes to work. Psychologists studying myth formation note that humans are not merely storytelling creatures. We are pattern completion creatures. Presented with incomplete information, the brain instinctively builds structures around absence. It fills empty spaces not randomly, but according to ancient emotional architectures. Danger, wonder, transcendence, pursuit. The Arctic is almost perfectly engineered to trigger this process. It is visually minimal, acoustically deceptive, geographically immense, and biologically sparse. Every anomaly feels amplified against the emptiness. A single unexplained sound becomes enormous there. Eventually, of course, the scientific consensus arrived. Acoustic specialists, analyzing surviving fragments of the original recordings, concluded that the polar voice was almost certainly the result of ice deformation interacting with distant whale vocalizations under unusual atmospheric conditions. Low-frequency sounds can travel extraordinary distances in polar environments. Ice layers bend and distort audio in ways capable of producing eerily organic effects. The explanation was technically convincing and emotionally insufficient, because the mystery had never really been about the recording, not underneath. Underneath, it was about the possibility that somewhere beyond the illuminated perimeter of human knowledge, the world still possessed hidden chambers. That desire has followed humanity everywhere. Into oceans, into mountains, into space. Carl Sagan once remarked that science is not only compatible with spirituality, but a profound source of it. What he meant was that genuine knowledge does not shrink reality. The more precisely we understand the universe, the stranger it often becomes. Black holes are real. Quantum entanglement is real. There are organisms living around hydrothermal vents deep enough to exist entirely without sunlight. Reality did not become less mysterious when science advanced. It became mysterious in more rigorous ways. And yet, some older part of the human mind still longs for mysteries with footprints, voices, eyes in darkness, tangible unknowns inhabiting physical landscapes. Not because we are foolish, because we evolved inside uncertainty and have not emotionally adapted to its disappearance. There is a moment familiar to anyone who has spent time in extreme wilderness, when the environment becomes so large that the self begins to feel structurally fragile. The normal human sense of centrality dissolves. You stop feeling like the main character of reality and start feeling like a temporary biological event occurring inside something ancient and incomprehensibly vast. That sensation can become fear or awe, usually both. The polar voice gave people a place to store that feeling. Here beneath the Arctic ice, it said, something still moves beyond the edge of understanding. And maybe, in a way, that remains true. Not literally. The sounds were almost certainly ice and whales and atmospheric distortion interacting inside one of the harshest acoustic environments on Earth. But the feeling underneath the search was real. The intuition that the world exceeds our current maps is not irrational. It is the engine of exploration itself. Every scientific revolution begins with someone noticing an anomaly and refusing to look away from it. Most anomalies resolve into ordinary explanations. A few do not. And humanity advances because we continue investigating both categories. Think about the last time you stood somewhere genuinely remote. Somewhere without traffic, or screens, or electrical hum. The strange recalibration that happens there. The awareness that civilization is thinner than it appears. That beneath roads and cities and databases, the planet remains fundamentally wild. The Arctic intensifies that awareness until it becomes almost unbearable. The polar voice was never really about a hidden creature under the ice. It was about the ancient human suspicion that reality is deeper than the version we managed to describe to each other. And even now, after the studies and acoustic models and scientific papers, when wind moves across frozen water in the far north and strange sounds rise through miles of darkness beneath the ice, some part of the human mind still listens carefully, just in case the map is not finished after all.